At some point in our lives, we all will have experienced something like this feeling, where we're engaged in something creative and time seems altered somehow. Those moments of sudden insight, of being in the zone. But what's actually going on in the brain when this happens? I've invited neuroscientist Lewis Howe to join me at the point in my day when all my best ideas flow out of my brain. My morning walks with these guys. So we've been talking to lots of different people about being in the creative zone and what it means to be in the flow. What's the scientific take on that?
I think, this idea of being in flow is a really interesting question from the science point of view, because it starts tapping into things like consciousness. You know, there's kind of in the zone, what is that? Time seems to slow down, but also sometimes be faster.
Yeah.
And there have been a few really interesting studies looking at jazz musicians, putting them in an fMRI, so a functional MRI scanner, playing something they've practiced before, so they've pre-learnt,
right,
and then comparing that with something that when they are improvising. And we see some really interesting changes in this kind of network, creativity network, or...
So it actually looks different.
It does.
When you're playing something you know and when you're improvising.
Exactly. And so what seems to be happening is that there's a part of the brain called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. So it's kind of maybe up here, next to your temple. And in fact, this is the part of the brain which seems to be really involved in social inhibition, and it's the kind of part that really
doing the right thing,
the regulator. It develops over adolescence, but there seems to be a temporary disabling of that part of the brain, and then actually there's other parts of the brain that actually become more active.
What interests me about what you just said is that if that's the part of the brain that develops during adolescence, that maybe when people talk about creativity as being a childlike state, that you are kind of going back to a state where you're less of an adult, you're less inhibiting your thought processes.
I think that's definitely the truth.
So perhaps accessing the unconscious